What's going on, guys? Here again with Anthony, bringing you guys some new nutrition info for today. So we're going to be talking about two specific diets that have kind of hit the fitness industry by storm. A lot of people are talking about it. I don't want to call them fad diets, but I'm going to use fad just because, potentially it could be down the line. Flexible dieting and if it fits your macros. These are two things you guys probably hear a ton about. I see it on my Instagram feed every single day in one way, shape, or form. So, Anthony, what are your thoughts on flexible dieting and if it fits your macros?
The best way to describe it is kind of if you think about a toolbox, there's going to be a lot of tools in there, and they all have something they're going to work for. Does that mean I'm going to try to put a screw in the wall with a hammer? Probably not. Wouldn't be very effective. So with both of those, there's a certain population that it's going to work for, and there's some people that are going to get results. So the counter to anytime I've had this discussion with people is always, well, so-and-so did it and they competed and they look great. Okay, but for me, I'm thinking big picture. I'm thinking long term, and I'm thinking like, is this really sustainable? So I guess I should back up. When we talk about a diet, in my mind, and for a lot of people, that basically says you're going from point A to point B. Nothing wrong with that. We have certain events coming up, maybe a class reunion, vacation, whatever that we want to look good for. So in a situation like that, diet's probably applicable, but I prefer to think about things kind of like I want to be in shape all year round. Like my fiance is 4 years younger than me. I start getting fat and sloppy, she's out the door. So that being said, it's like, how can I eat all year round that I'm going to stay lean and stay right about where I want to be in terms of my health, in terms of my appearance, all that. I think to do that when you talk about something like flexible dieting or if it fits your macros, that two of the biggest downfalls with that, two of the many, are if when you talk about if it fits your macros, that kind of thing, you turn food into numbers, and food is meant to be enjoyed. That when we sit down to eat, it's a great way to connect with people. It's a great way to experience other cultures. And when you start to take the enjoyment out of food and just become a robot that's counting numbers, you're really losing concept of one of the most important things that food is. It's again, it's that connection, and it's a nutrition foundation. My personal opinion about that stuff, like if you think about why it works. So if you take somebody that's had success with one of these diets and they're just eating garbage, and all of a sudden, like you've got them on something a little bit more structured. Well, a couple things are probably happening that they're not really aware of. One, there's probably been a minor reduction in calories as far as their food intake goes. And I'm definitely not a calories in, calories out type of guy. However, I'll acknowledge that if you take somebody that's eating 5,000 calories of unstructured garbage and you reduce it to 4,000 calories of somewhat structured garbage, they're going to lose weight. And furthermore, when you consider the thermic effect of food, protein, carbohydrate, fat, if you've got somebody that's eating 50 grams of protein a day, you increase it to 100 grams of protein just by the thermic effect of food. If their calorie intake was exactly the same, they're going to burn more calories through digestion. So again, it'll cause weight loss for that reason. Now, is it optimal? Well, let's use a little common sense here, people. Is it optimal to eat a Snickers bar instead of a cup of rice? I'm going to say no. I wish it was. I love Snickers bars. I like rice also, but it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I expect people to have a little bit more knowledge in that when you think about a competition, getting up on a bodybuilding stage, figure stage, whatever, it's a really, really, really extreme in terms of the conditioning level. And if it was as simple as like, oh, well, my coach told me I can eat 60 grams of carbohydrates, so I'm going to go get a scoop of ice cream and 30 grams of protein, so I guess I'll eat a little bit of chicken here and 10 grams of fat. Well, there's my olive oil, done for the day. Like if it was really that simple, it wouldn't be such a big deal to get to the Olympia stage. You'd see a lot more fit people out there. It just, it doesn't work when you're talking about getting anything past like better condition than you were in before.
Yeah. I really like that analogy that you gave. That was pretty spot on. So you kind of hinted on this, like the last little part that you said. Obviously, like you kind of joke about the ice cream and stuff, still laughing about it. Are all calories created equal? So the calories from ice cream, like the fat, carbohydrates, protein, whatever, versus the fat, carbohydrates in sweet potato, like chicken, steak, like whatever it may be. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because that is a concept that a lot of people, and again, I think they probably bastardized it a little bit with the whole flexible dieting thing, with the whole if it fits your macros thing. I think people have just spun it whatever they want to.
Yeah. The short answer is no, calories are not equal. That each calorie, whether you're talking about a protein, a carbohydrate, or a fat, has a different thermic effect. And when we talk about thermic effect, that's how many calories are going to be dissipated as heat through the digestive process. So where protein can have up to 30% of the calories dissipated as heat, carbohydrate might be a little bit more likely to have 10 to 11, and fat, if you're not talking about a medium chain triglyceride, is probably going to be even a little bit lower in the carbohydrate. So if we've got the same amount of calories from all those foods, just when we digest them, it's going to be a different outcome. Kind of brings me to an interesting topic, and one of the reasons that I prefer food over like protein bars. A lot of those protein bars like net carbs too. Well, the thing is, what they're not counting is the sugar alcohols. So alcohol is kind of a funny calorie in and of itself. Alcohol can't be stored as glycogen, it cannot. So anytime you take in alcohol, basically you have to metabolize it before you can start to use anything else. So a good friend of mine and a coach that I really learned a lot from and respect, Owen Lacey, talks about 5-2-1 dieters, or 5-2-0 dieters. So 5 days are excellent. 2 days, pretty good to go out drinking big time on the weekend. Number of results, 0. Reason for that, when if you go out binge drinking on a Friday night and for the next 16, 17, 24 hours you're metabolizing that alcohol, no matter how healthy you eat the next day, despite on top of the low testosterone levels from going out and drinking and all the other problems, as your liver's trying to filter out that alcohol, all the good stuff coming in is getting put into fat until it figures out what to do with it. I train a lot of people that are in the sales field, and they're like, what if I go out and I just have one drink? I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if you're asking me if you're going to get the same result as if you don't have that drink, the answer would be no. And the reason for it is, and I explained to him about that, so if you're going to go out and have a drink with your friends on the weekend, there's nothing wrong with that, but be aware. My suggestion is drink, if you're going to have one glass of, or one beer, drink 2, twice as much water before and after, so it filters out a little bit better, and wait at least 12 hours from, minimum 12 hours from when you had that beer, so 100% of it's filtered out of your system. That'll also reduce your calories for the next day. And then you don't have to worry about still metabolizing alcohol when you've got the good food coming in.
So you're recommending, let's say somebody goes out on Friday night and they drink until, I'm making it up, midnight. It's like when they cut it out. So you're recommending a fast after that, and like
so at least doing, and really with the people that I train, I kind of push closer towards like a 16 hours. Okay. And I tell them the same cutoff point. So like hypothetically, if like their last meal of the day was at 8, normally they start eating at 10. Well, now they're if they went out, they had their last drink at 12, and then we're going to have a 16-hour fast. From 2 to 8, they'd be able to eat and get a couple meals in. Tell them to drink a lot of water, and so that everything continues to filter out. Make sure they get a good night's rest so that insulin sensitivity's back up, and that would probably be the best way to mitigate it.
Interesting. When you had taught me about like the liver and processing alcohol years ago, it was funny that like you had just like cleared like the back half of that story up for me. So, what are your thoughts on? So, in your mind, like you and I talked like years ago, and like one of the foundational things that you had taught me about nutrition is like if you're 80% good, like if you're eating 5 times a day, 4 of those meals are perfect, spot on, and that 5th meal, like you kind of go off a little bit, you're still going to get good results. But the higher, obviously, you go 90+%, obviously the better results you're going to get. If you use that as kind of like a template for your flexible dieting or something like that, right? And like maybe that last meal, instead of being a super ideal whatever, and like, you know, out of a whole like gluten-free Donato's pizza or something like that, you have a quarter of it or something like that, that's obviously not going to kill you, and you were still 80% good, right? As opposed to like the flexible dieting concepts that you see, well, like exactly like what we were joking about a couple minutes ago, that the ice cream and the Snickers bar were the exact same. Do you think that like athletes, like obviously, you know, you hear about like a lot of these NBA players eating like crazy stuff before games. Like I think like Hedo Turkoglu, like way back in the day, if you remember him, that played for the Orlando Magic, I'm pretty sure he slammed like a whole pizza before a game or something like that. Now, how true that is, like I said, I don't know that guy personally, but I guess like what are your thoughts on that? Like what do you think about elite level athletes doing this?
I think with elite level athletes, there's a couple things to consider. One, to make it to pro sports, they're probably already in like the top 2% of the gene pool. So how they're going to react to foods just in general is going to be a lot different than the average population. A lot of the success that pro athletes have has less to do with their nutrition, not to detract from the value of good nutrition. And in fact, in a lot of cases, you see people with this potential and they could be even better. But it's more about a habit. So you think about, if we're using him as an example, chances are when he was in high school, that was something he did and he had success, and brain starts to imprint that, like, if I eat a pizza, I win a game. So by essentially feeding a habit and doing something habitual, that's why Michael Phelps was so successful and his routine seems so unorthodox, that the more you can kind of override the thinking process of what you're doing and your preparation's habitual, the more of your nervous system you have available for performance.
Interesting. I mean, it could have had to do with the fact he was 6'10" and could shoot.
There's that, yeah. I think I'm gonna hit my growth spurt this year. We're looking to go from about 5'6" to a minimum of 6'5".
Hey, I think
but I'll settle for 6'4".
I think you got a hell of a shot in the MLB, man.
49. That's my year.
What? So that's kind of dealing with the flexible dieting thing. Like you kind of talk pros, cons of it.
Yeah.
What? Okay, so you kind of touched briefly on if it fits your macros in terms of you're turning food that's enjoyable, something that people can like, you know, discuss and talk and relate over, to numerical value. So obviously you're probably leaning a little bit more towards the bad side. What do you like at least about it, and what don't you like about it? Because obviously, to an extent, like we talked a little bit in the previous episode about show dieting.
Yeah.
There are numbers that have to go down.
Yeah.
Right. So touch a little bit on that if you wouldn't mind.
I think that well, I guess what I like about it is if you are talking specific to a show diet, that sometimes people just need a specific target to focus on. People can identify with a number, and when you have something quantifiable in terms of from the coach's position, it does make it a little bit easier to look at their energy expenditure and their day-to-day stuff, what they're taking in, and whether it's more likely that I need to adjust their training or their nutrition. One of my mentors who will be here with me in October, Stefan Cezo, he is kind of evolved my thinking into by smartly programming the workouts leading up to the workout, increasing the density so you're burning more calories through the training itself, that you don't really have to manipulate so many nutrition variables. To give you some numbers, for instance, let's say you go in, you're working out, weight training, and you're burning 400 calories in a workout, and your BMR is 3,500 calories, so netting 3,100 calories a day. Now, as we get closer to training in that same hour, if we increase the density of work or increase the frequency of the workouts, essentially, when you look at over the course of a week, we might be able to create a 3,500 calorie deficit by just burning an extra 500 calories throughout with a little bit of extra volume. Then maybe we add an extra day of training. Before you know it, we've hit that what we would have had to do with food, and people feel better because, kind of going back to the habit thing, they're consistently eating, so they don't have to think about like, shoot, I have to measure this. Yeah. It's like, no, just go do your workout, focus on your workout, train hard, train intense, and make your movement purposeful.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's obviously another great point, great way to look at it. All right, guys, so that is it for today. That is mine and Anthony's take on flexible dieting and if it fits your macros. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, subscribe, turn on the post notifications. Let us know if you like this, and I will see you next time.